Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Logical Nonsense Podcast. Today we have a great Christmas weekend recap. We are going to be rating the games. We are going to be looking into week 17 and on. We have the playoffs right around the corner. Best time of the year, some electric games, some interesting storylines. NFC, AFC, it's all a mess. The NFL is a mess right now. Honestly, couldn't even really tell you why everything is so close. They're yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. We're also going to talk about some interesting storylines, such as why I think Lamar Jackson is getting a little too much hype for the MVP, as well as some other quarterback situations. Why Mike Vrabel, honestly, again, showed why he isn't as good of a coach as he has been um, thought out to be. So we'll get into it. Let's start with rate the game, starting with Thursday night football. You know, the Rams, frisky team. I've talked about it here on this podcast. I've talked that out on other podcasts. Shout out stuff about sports over there. Talked about it on there. I mean, Matt Stafford continues to get it done. Not Mike Vrabel. Sean McVay continues to get it done. This team knows how to play ball on offense. Obviously, the defense is doing enough, but it's not what's carrying this team. I'm extremely happy to see Matt Stafford doing well again. A lot of people wrote this team off. I think at the beginning of the year, their line was about 5.5. And so you have guys like Puka Nakua, Kyron Williams having hell of years. And when you see that, you have to kind of be happy. I mean, how could you not be happy with seeing a guy like Kyron Williams, Puka Nakua really step up because they weren't expected to. And I mean, it's great news for Sean McVay, and especially because this team spent so much a couple years ago, and I think they thought, oh, that was it, a 1 year wonder. They have a real chance to do some damage in the playoffs. Like I'd be scared of this offense if I was looking into the playoffs. You know, I know what you're thinking. You're giving this team a whole hell of a lot of hype for beating the Saints on a Thursday night football game. They controlled the game the entire time. They looked really, really solid. You know, they were up 27-7 and they almost let it come back, but they didn't. And I just think this team is a force to be reckoned with. When it comes down to the playoffs, they could easily be 10-7 and find their way in the playoffs. So I'm hoping they make it just because I think Matty Ice, not Matty Ice, Matt Stafford, in the playoffs is always fun to watch, especially because he's 33, man. Good for him. Going to rating that game, we'll go we'll go Mediterranean. I like to watch Matt Stafford, you know, sling the ball around, and I don't love Saints football, but at least they try to make a comeback. There's nothing really to say about the Saints. They have guys like Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara, and yet they still choose a mediocre quarterback at their as their leader. And Derek Carr is the definition of mediocrity. I don't think that's a hot take. I think everyone has agreed on it now. Going to Saturday. Going to Saturday, another game that was interesting. I don't know if people expected such a blowout, especially with the Bengals' momentum. I know I didn't. I actually predicted the Bengals was going to win, but the Steelers went out and they looked good on offense. A lot of people are like, "Oh, Matt Canada's gone. That'll help. Oh, Mitch Trubisky's going to be in. He'll help." Nope. Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph's the man that helped. I don't know if I expected it. I don't know if I believe in the Mason Rudolph hype, but I will say this. It does show you when you can get the ball to your weapons, such as George Pickens, what can happen. I think you just need a quarterback that can do that. I think about a lot of quarterbacks in this league that could help. Um, imagine if Joe Flacco was on this team, which we'll get to later, but imagine if Joe Flacco was on this team instead of a Kenny Pickett or whatever. I think this team would be in a lot better shape, and maybe not as inconsistent. Obviously, they have a solid defense, and for them to win in this way, I think was good for their confidence as well as their playoff hopes. Bengals on the other side, Sucks. They had momentum. Jake Browning was looking really solid. He didn't have that great of a game. Bengals didn't have a great game. Hopefully, they can go back to the drawing board, figure it out next week. But they're gonna have to probably win out if they want a chance at the playoffs. Luckily, their playoff hopes are still alive because the AFC is such a mess. But going to the Bills, Chargers. Also, that game was a shit show. Bills, Chargers. Bills barely hung on, and for that, I'm gonna go Mediterranean. The Bills really felt like they were just playing not to lose. Obviously, they really needed this win with how their playoff hopes really are right now. A lot of teams, a lot of people kind of quit on this Bills team because they've lost some big games this year. And last week, they dominated the Cowboys, and there was some, oh, maybe the Bills are okay. Yeah, they are okay. Teams have been inconsistent this year. Teams have had bad games this year. A lot of good teams too. So I think Bills fall right in that category. They're going to be a lower seed, but I guarantee you, not one AFC team wants to see the Bills on their playoff schedule. The Bills could be a dark horse. They are now the underdogs, and whenever you're the underdogs, it's not it's not pretty. The Bills could still go 11-6. I would just like to point that out. That's not a bad record, not at all. So Um, but they didn't look that great, honestly. I think the change in offense has been working. It wasn't as great this game. I mean, I'm not saying like they had a bad game, but it was just kind of average and they didn't look prolific by any means. Chargers, I mean, Easton Stick, I think he's better than average, but I don't think he's anything too special. And, you know, good for the Bills, I guess. That's all I got to say. Going to the Colts, Falcons. Really bad loss by the Colts. Falcons are not a team you want to ever lose to by I mean, that just sucks. But the Colts, they needed this one and they didn't get it done. And I I don't know. I mean, Minshew, obviously, he's another inconsistent quarterback. Um, and he didn't look good in this game. On the other side of the ball, the Falcons finally put in Taylor Heineke, and what do you know? They got a win. It's crazy what happens when Desmond Ritter isn't there. And that's just a lesson. There's certain quarterbacks that don't work. Desmond Ritter, Kenny Pickett, Zach Wilson. It's almost like sometimes I am right on this podcast. It's almost like there is a reason why I say this. And when I say that, I don't mean that their backups are better, or I don't mean that their backups are gonna do a whole hell of a lot better, like, they're not gonna lead them to this Super Bowl run, but I'm only saying that because I do think they would be better off with their backup sometimes, and as we saw here, their offense wasn't prolific. Young Ho Koo had to make 5 field goals for them to win it, but they did it. They got it done against a Colts team that is solid, so Titans, Seahawks, I mean, the Seahawks, another inconsistent team. There was talks about them making Super Bowl run at the beginning of the year, and obviously those have kind of went away. They find ways to win when they need to, but I don't think they're even a team that I would expect to make a playoff run because there's nothing special about this team. They they have weapons, but their offense hasn't really looked anything too stellar to me. Their defense has looked above average. And I just don't see anything from this team where I'm like, wow, they are a threat. The Titans, on the other hand, they need to figure some things out. I think they need to look at what Mike Vrabel has done. This is another easily winnable game for the Titans, and they lost it. They lost to the Texans now with a very easily winnable game. They lost that lead, and then they lost this lead against the Seahawks. Obviously, it's not all the coach's fault. There is some culture and players on that, but there is a coaching aspect of this where you can better manage your players. And I think when it happens time and time again, obviously something's not working. I also think his philosophy on offense hasn't been the greatest. I know you like to run the ball. Derrick Henry hasn't had a good year and probably I don't wanna say hasn't had a good year. He hasn't been as efficient, hasn't been as dominating as he once was and could and can be. We've seen it, and I think that's really because of the coaching. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think this team has done what they needed to in schemes, to better and accentuate their players. They haven't looked good. So, another bad loss, and I think Mike Vrabel should be talked about more on the coaching hot seat. So, Lions, Vikings, and the Seahawks, Titans, and so the Falcons, Colts was Mediterranean or shit show, and then Seahawks, Titans was a Mediterranean game. There was nothing special about it, but I mean it was watchable. Lions, Vikings, Mediterranean. Lions felt like they were holding on as well. Obviously, they had a bigger lead than the Bills ever did, but they kinda let the Vikings get back into it at one point, 23-21 in the 3rd quarter, and you thought maybe the Vikings could pull this off. They didn't. The Lions got it done. And good for the Lions. I mean, they finally got their first divisional title since 1993, which is 30 years of torture probably for this fan base. They had to go through the Packers with their Favre years, and then they had the Packers with their Aaron Rodgers years. Then they have the Vikings who had a couple good teams in there. I mean, this team has struggled, and even the Bears, Devin Hester year, they've seen it all. So I do think this team is a little fraudulent, a little overhyped at times, but for what they've done this year and for them to honestly, they had a little bit of higher expectations than usual. I think a lot of people are like, I think the Lions are going to be good this year. That became a um, popular quote unquote bold take, not a bold take. Most people had that take. So I think that the Lions met expectations and honestly beat mine. I honestly thought that they were a little overhyped going into the year. I do think they are still a little overhyped. I don't know if they are going to like I would be surprised if they got in the Super Bowl if I'm being honest. And they have one of the best records. And I don't say that about the other teams with records similar to theirs, but I would be a little surprised. I just don't think they have the it factor against the really good teams um to make a run to the Super Bowl. So, but with that being said, I do think the Lions and the Rams have gotten the best out of that Matt Stafford, Jared Goff trade. Jared Goff needed change of scenery out of LA. Expectations were high there. And I'm not saying that, expectations were so low that he has succeeded and that's the only way. No, it's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I think he got down on himself a little bit too much because of the media in LA and how harsh the media is there and the expectations there from Sean McVay and his scheme. And I think Jared Goff's a good quarterback. I think he's probably a top 15 quarterback in this league right now. And that might be underselling him a little bit, but I would have to look at the quarterback list to tell you if he was even top 10. Um, but I can comfortably say he's top 15 at least. And a lot of people were giving him that credit even in LA. So for him to be able to thrive again in a system, to carry this team to the 11-4 team that they are, to their first divisional title. When he first got there, they were still losing, and they've now turned it around with him. I think that's really great for him, for his story, for his confidence. And on the other side of the ball, the Rams, they won a Super Bowl with Matt Stafford. Stafford's again leading them to a possible playoff run. And I think Matt Stafford, when he was at the Lions, I think it was like one of those things where people were like, "Oh, he's a really great quarterback on a really shitty team." And it was true, but I think they did need that change of leadership for them to move on, and they did it. They got it done, and I think Matt Stafford kind of needed some of that praise after not really getting a ton for so long. So good for him. And then going to going to the Commanders Jets. I don't really want to talk about this game. I mean, I think it was pretty Mediterranean. Honestly, it was a shit show. The Commanders and Jets were playing. Neither of these teams matter. They don't care. Trevor Simeon played. Thank God. Brees Hall had a really great game, and it sucks that Aaron Rodgers is out. I don't know what else you want me to say here. Commanders. The one thing I will say though about the Commanders pisses me off. They took out Sam Howell, and here's why. Back to back games now where you've taken out Sam Howell. I think this kid needs game time to get better. I think a majority of young quarterbacks need game time to get better. When you take out a guy like Sam Howell in a game that doesn't matter, Commanders are 4-11. Why take him out? You're demoralizing his confidence. You're not going to win this game, and even if you do win this game, it doesn't matter. So why take him out? Let him struggle through that. It's needed as a development in a quarterback, and yet they still did it. Doesn't make sense. I know Jacoby Brissett should be a starter somewhere else. Okay, cool. He doesn't need to be a starter on this team. Let your young guy figure out his struggles, figure out his weaknesses in a game like this because there's absolutely zero reason why you need to pull him out in a game like this when it doesn't matter. Let him struggle through it. Let him figure it out. These are the growing moments that he needs as a development in his player, as a player. So, not a big fan of that decision. Going to the Packers Panthers. This game doesn't matter to me. I'll go shit show again just because it doesn't matter. Like the Panthers, um, actually, I'll go Mediterranean, and here's why. I think a lot of people, they didn't give they've been kind of not writing off. They've been really criticizing Bryce Young. Bryce Young finally had a great game. He had what? Bryce Young had 312 yards for 2 touchdowns. I mean, he looks solid and nobody's talking about it. And the reason why is it doesn't fit their narrative of Bryce Young as a bust. And I'm going to give you your flowers. I think you played solid and it's crazy, as I said, with Sam Howell. These young quarterbacks need game time, and it's crazy what happens when they continue to get game time. They finally find their groove. Obviously, the Packers defense is, it's above average. I'm not gonna say it's bad, but it's above average. So, I mean, he was able to get it done. Let's just give him that. And Packers found a way to win. I don't know if I think they're still in playoff contention, but a lot of things would have to happen. Um, I mean, both pretty Panthers are bad and Packers are mediocre. So Browns, Texans, Joe Flacco, man, he gets it done. This team really just needed a veteran at the helm. Obviously, they lost Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb, and it's scary to think what this team would be with them because they're looking freaking good. Kevin Stefanski, man, I think he should have been. I think he should be talked about as coach of the year. With all the injuries that have happened on this team, the way this team has looked, especially from last year to this year, it's incredible. Um, they are looking solid. They have an elite defense, both in the secondary as well as up front. Miles Garrett, Zadarius Smith. Miles Garrett should be defense player of the year. And I mean, this team is fun to watch. Mari Cooper, he had a hell of a game, probably one of the best games of the year. 11 receptions, 265 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It's insane. Probably the only one that other competes is that Jamar Chase game earlier in the year. But Browns, another team that I don't think you want to play in the playoffs when it comes, just because their defense is so solid. They can really stop anyone, and just not a team I would want to face. Texans, kind of a bad loss. Luckily, Colts lost. Jags lost, so you're still in it, but it sucks because I just know this team would be probably doing a whole of a hell of a lot better if CJ Stroud was still in. Nico Collins played this game. If Hank Dell was injured, so injury bug has really gotten to a lot of teams at this time of year. It always does. So hopefully the Texans can persevere because I think they're an underdog team. But that game probably I'll go Mediterranean. It was fun to see Joe Flacco back throwing that ball around. Um, Jags, Bucks. I'll go shit show. The Jags looked like absolute dog water. Trevor Lawrence being overrated take is aging pretty damn well. Obviously, he's injured, man. I don't know why he's continued to playing, but he's just not looking good. The Bucks looked like they could be one of the best teams in the NFC. That's what the Jags made them look like. I don't think they are. I think they are the best team in the NFC South, which isn't saying much. I just like to say that. But Baker's, when he's playing good, he's solid. A lot of people have hated on him, but he can get it done. And when this team's healthy, they look good. So Bucks, good win, really good win for them. The Jags, on the other hand, have really fallen off since their 8-3 start, and they got to get back to the drawing board and figure out what the hell's going on because this isn't going to work. Cards versus Bears. The Bears, I mean, I sound like a broken record. The Bears are a solid team. Justin Lawrence should not be replaced by Caleb Williams. He is a solid quarterback, and I think they could do just fine with him as their quarterback, as their leader. And yeah, I think they should continue to try it out. I mean, this is a solid win, and um, they need to go get Marvin Harrison and some linemen. So, Dolphins, Cowboys. I mean, this game was low key anticlimactic for me. There wasn't a ton of offensive, you know, stuff. I mean, god damn it. Tyreek Hill is so dangerous with the ball. Like every time, like the way the defense reacts when he has the ball in his hand is unlike anything else. I think the only one that compares right now is probably Christian McCaffrey. Um, to how the defense reacts and almost panics. Um, but another solid game. I think the Dallas Cowboys don't know how to win against a winning team on the road, and that scares me for playoffs because you need to figure that out. Obviously, last second field goal by the Dolphins, really good win for them, really good win for their confidence. But I don't know. I think the Cowboys, they are a top 10 team still. And a lot of people are going to say, no, they're not. They're fraudulent. Yes, they are. They just don't really know how to be clutch. And if they can figure out how to win those close games, they'll be fine. They only have 2 games to figure it out. And who knows, maybe they'll catch momentum going into the playoffs. But I still don't think they're a team you like necessarily want to face in the playoffs. I mean, they're still dangerous, and a lot of people are starting to write them off, which is never a good storyline. But um, the Cowboys are the Cowboys. They're gonna lose games like this. So, and then finally finishing out the Christmas Eve night, we have a fucking horrendous game against the Patriots and Broncos. I mean, first play, Broncos recover fumble, go up, and we go for it on 4th and goal. Well, first we throw a pick. It gets called back because it was incomplete. So Russ almost threw a pick in the end zone at the 2-yard line. Just awful throw. And then Javonte Williams trips at the 1-yard line and we don't score. Which we could have used that score. It was 7-3 at halftime. Very defensive game. And then the Patriots just blew up in the second half. Really got a big lead. We tried to come back. We had a missed field goal at one point. I mean, this game was just a shit show on so many levels, and I was scared of this game. I knew the Broncos were very capable of losing this game. They have a lot of false hope in this team. I don't think this team is I mean, this team is just it's like somebody that toys with your mind. They're not that great. They're also not that bad. And I don't know, man. I think like I know I keep saying this, but they really just need one more year to figure it out. And sadly, I don't know if this fan base and this organization is wanting to have one more year to figure it out. So I don't know. This was an awful win or awful loss. The Patriots did not need this win, and we let them have it. So going to Monday, Christmas, first game, Patrick Mahomes really lost this game. I mean, this was another shit show. Uh, the Raiders didn't have a passing attempt after the first quarter. The reason they scored 20 points is because the Raiders had a pick six and a fumble recovery for touchdown. The Raiders defense is solid. Like it doesn't get talked about enough, but it's solid. Max Crosby is a fucking menace. The Raiders are a low key kind of good team, and it is funny. I saw something. The Chiefs were to lose their last two games. The Broncos win. The Raiders win. Week 18, they could have a fight for the AFC West title. Um, I think that would spice things up a little bit. I would love that, but I don't think it's gonna happen. But yeah, I think Pat Mahomes needs to take care of the ball a little bit better. He's an elite quarterback. He had a bad game, and this team has not looked the same. I think the problem, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, there isn't a ton of like change in the team from last year to this year." Juju's not on this team anymore, and a lot of people are like, "Why are you pointing to Juju of all people?" Juju at least distracted the defense enough to respect him as a weapon. I think the only player that people respect as a weapon on this team is Travis Kelce, and he's had a down year. And I think there's a reason for that. It's because people respect him as a weapon, and this team has really been figured out. They need to do some serious hunting in the offseason to find some guys for Patrick Mahomes. Um, and Patrick Mahomes needs to do some self discoveration again because he hasn't been looking good at all this year either. This team has really been carried a lot by their defense, and that's not that's not good. So um, I think they're gonna make playoffs probably still, but they are not the same team as they were last year. Eagles, Giants. Eagles found a way to win once again. I feel like that's just been the storyline this entire year. And, a lot of people are gonna hate on the way they win. But honestly, I'm just gonna say it. They're a little overhated on. Sure, they don't look like what they did last year, but they find ways to win, and that's what good teams do. Um, I'm not saying that they're gonna be, in the Super Bowl. They still could be though. And I think a lot of people don't even think they could do that. And I definitely think they still could be. I think they are very easily a team that find ways to win against good teams and bad teams, and I wouldn't want to face them in the playoffs. So going to our final game, the Ravens Niners. I do want to talk about this MVP conversation a little bit, but first, Brock Purdy had a four-pick game. Obviously, he's a big storyline here. I will say this: I think two of those could have been deemed as not really his fault. Very good defensive plays. Two deflections into the defensive's hands, and that's not good. Um, you know, Purdy obviously didn't have a good game. I don't think he's a fluke. I don't think he's a fraud. I think he had a bad game. Quarterbacks have bad games. I think this is just another example of it, and they will bounce back. The Niners are a good team. I've said it all year. I honestly think if they meet again in the Super Bowl, the Niners will win. They are the better team, in my opinion, on both sides of the ball. They have the most weapons. And the Ravens, I think, are a regular season team, and I think the Niners are built for a postseason team. That's the difference. And I also think a lot of people are going to get probably a little, probably a little angry at this. Lamar Jackson doesn't deserve to be MVP this year. Quarterback does not deserve to be MVP. I think Christian McCaffery has proven that he is an MVP. And here's why. Lamar Jackson leads quarterbacks in one category. That category is rushing yards. He leads it by about 100 and I think 50 yards, which is a lot. I agree. However, he's 15th in passing yards. He's 14th, tied for 14th in passing touchdowns. He's tied for 4th in rushing touchdowns, and he's 8th in QBR. If I were to tell you that and you were voting, you're going to sit here and tell me that he is the best player in the league? I don't know. And maybe you're going to be like, "Oh, well, he's the most valuable player to his team." Okay. Do you really think that? Do you really think that? Because this fucking defense is pretty damn good too. And I honestly think this defense has been pretty damn solid to get their ball back to this offense who can rush against anyone. And I don't want to say I'm not sitting here and telling you Lamar Jackson is good. He is good. He is a top quarterback, and I think he's proven that this year. But he's not the best quarterback in the league. You know who is the best running back in the league? And undeniably, Christian McCaffrey. Do you want to know why? He's first in rushing yards. He's first in receiving yards. He's first in receiving touchdowns. He's third in rushing touchdowns. He has 2,000 combined yards. He has almost 20 total receiving or 20 total touchdowns. So 2,000 yards total and 20 total touchdowns with 2 games left. Does that sound not like a MVP status to you? Sure does to me. Think about how much better this San Francisco 49ers team has been with Christian McCaffrey. He deserves it. I don't really see an argument why he doesn't. The production he's put up is undeniable. And I honestly think this 49ers team would not even be close to as prolific as they would be without him. Lamar Jackson, I'm sorry, you do not deserve the MVP this year. Quarterback in general does not deserve the MVP this year. No quarterback has been dominating like Christian McCaffrey has been dominating at the running back position. All right, going to predicting the games. I'm not going to go rapid fire picks because it's just me today, but going to predicting the games. First, we got Jets Browns. This will be not an interesting game. The Browns are at home. I expect them to win this game. It might be a little closer than usual just because Thursday night football. I don't know. This game, it's going to be close or it's going to be a blowout, and I don't think there's any in between. So I'm going to go with the Browns, though. I think they just have too solid of defense, and they've been clicking lately. Lions Cowboys. I'll go with the Cowboys. I think a lot of people are writing them off. I think the Lions are a little fraudulent as well. And the reason why I'll go with the Cowboys here is just because I think they need this game more, one, and two, they're at home. So I'm gonna go with the Cowboys. Um, the Chargers, Broncos. Oh gosh. Actually, I don't know. I think the Broncos are needing this game more, and they'll continue to give their fans false hope. They're also at home, which people overrate that a little too much with the Broncos. Honestly, like their record, it feels like, and it could just be because I'm a Broncos fan, isn't as great as some people put it out to be. So I'm gonna go with the Broncos, Patriots, Bills. Go with I'll go with the Bills. I think the Patriots could fight. I mean, they've been fighting against teams on the road, especially on defense, but the Bills need this game more. They're 12-point favorites, which is nuts, but I mean, it makes sense. So I'll go with the Bills. Falcons, Falcons, Bears. Um, I'll go with the Bears. I mean, Bears have been looking solid lately. Justin Fields has been clicking. They're at home. Falcons. I don't know I mean, they're an NFC South team. I'll never go. I don't think I've ever picked the Falcons to win, which is probably a bad thing because they've won 7 games this year, but I'll never pick them to win. I hate picking them. Colts, Raiders. My gut's telling me Raiders just because I feel like they low key feel like they can make the playoffs still, and they still could technically. So I'm gonna go with the Raiders. I think the Colts will drop this one, and yeah, Rams, Giants. Rams are gonna win this one. I think I know they're in New York, but I think they are the better team. I think they will get it done. So Cardinals, Eagles. Eagles will win this one by a landslide. They'll be fine. Um, Not much to Eagles have a good closing schedule, so they'll probably win out 13-4. But Saints, Bucks. Bucks really need this one, and I think the Bucks get it done. Baker's gonna show why he's the GOAT. And or there is a world where Baker drops this game, and then we have 1 week for the Bucks to figure it out, but I think the Bucks will get it done. Niners, Commanders. Niners will win, bounce back game for Brock Purdy. Everyone talking about how he doesn't even deserve to be in the conversation anymore after 1 game will be biting their tongue, which that's another thing that pissed me off about Lamar Jackson. Why are you picking Lamar Jackson? Is it because he has truly been the most consistent best quarterback all season long, or is it because he just lost, or is it because he just beat the Niners, who you had as Brock Purdy as the favorite for MVP? Like, get the fuck out of here. I'm so tired of the recency bias. Like, it's so freaking annoying. Look at the entire season as a whole. Dak Prescott, if you wanna talk about Dak Prescott, he's had a hell of a season, but because he hasn't looked good the last 2 games, no one wants to talk about him as MVP, do they? No. So stupid, man. I'm over this whole MVP shit. Um, Panthers, Jags. Jags will get it done, make the AFC South look interesting. Whether Travis or Trevor Lawrence plays or not, we shall see. But Dolphins, Ravens. This will be an interesting one. Um, I'll go with the Dolphins as their first legitimate good win. Obviously, they beat the Cowboys. I guess you can consider that a good win, but I'll go with the Dolphins. I think they'll spice things up and make it interesting for that race. Titans, Texans. Give me the Texans. They really need this game, and especially a division game. So I'll go with the Texans. Steelers, Seahawks. I have no idea what to think about this game. Um, God, you could tell me either team would win, and I wouldn't even bat an eye. I'll go with the Seahawks because they're at home, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers pull this one off. Bengals, Chiefs. Give me the Bengals. I think the Bengals could pretty easily upset the Chiefs again, make things interesting. Like I said, if the Raiders and Broncos win and the Chiefs lose, then they could win the division, either the Broncos or the Raiders. So give me the Bengals. I love it. Packers, Vikings. I'll go with the I'll go with the Packers, but it's gonna be really close and ugly. So all right, that's this week's games. And yeah, that's this week's games. Thank you for listening if you did all the way through. Really appreciate everyone that's been supporting the channel, whether you're listening on Spotify or on YouTube. It's really appreciated. Really love you guys. We got some great content coming out soon, so make sure to stay tuned.